Oh, that's why I was like, I'm definitely
Okay, past due
not
publish.
yeah.
Okay. See when it's actually starts. Oh, is my.
Now.
Hey everybody, we are here for another live show. So welcome to Alex and Autos Live. And I just realized that I might need to actually check what microphone we're using on this because I totally forgot about that. So bear with me one moment while I think about that. If anybody has any objections about the audio quality, let me know. This is always entertaining. So it looks like, there we go. It looks like everything is correct there. So let's dive right into our first live show in a while. I apologize for not having a live show since, November, I think?
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. So if nobody knows, this is Alexandra. She's our videographer and editor here. And she's going to be in a video coming next week on all-wheel drive. So first off, I know a lot of folks have had strong opinions about other people other than me on the Alex and Autos channel. The real reason why is that there just aren't enough of me, and we haven't had any live shows here because I've been on the road a lot. You may have seen all the launches that have happened, and between now and 6 weeks from now, I think there are like another 7 launches plus the Geneva Auto Show and a bunch of different stuff. So there just aren't enough of me to go around. But we will start diving into your questions now. So, the first question was, what's on the wall behind me? Because it's an odd mix of stuff. So, just mainly odd mix of stuff, but a lot of giveaway items that we will be giving away later. So that's where usually giveaway items end up. So things like a Ram water bottle. This one's a Ford Mustang Mach-E water bottle. There's
some
actually
Ray-Ban
a
glasses.
Ray-Ban glasses.
Yes,
there's actually a Mustang. I don't know why you would want a Mustang, but there's a Mustang there. I guess I could give away the hobby horse. There's a cookbook. There's more water things all over the cutting board, a squishy cow something. I don't know. Any rate, so that's what those are. And then there are random odd things for home projects that haven't moved home. That's a water tank fill valve. Everybody always asks about the toilet valve at the end. No, I don't have a king size toilet. That's for a 20,000 gallon water tank that doesn't have its float in it yet. One day it will. And then over there's some other giveaway items, headphones and more water bottles and hats and that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's what's going on back there. I keep thinking about redesigning that wall behind me, and I just have never gotten around to it. But the rest of the studio has received some updates, so I can move the camera up there. So you can see there's hats up there at the top, and then there's a shirt over here somewhere.
We have a whole farm
there's a whole thing going on. We have a new lamp on the desk there because someone I know, it wasn't this someone I know, but some different person I know knocked it off the desk and it died. So new lamp there. Any rate, let's get into the questions.
Okay, our first question is, are hybrids and electric cars profitable compared to usual cars?
No, definitely not. So that's one of the big reasons that, for instance, we don't see plug-in cars in great numbers from the Japanese car companies, because unlike other car companies, the Japanese car companies, especially Toyota and Honda, hate making things that are inherently unprofitable. It's just not a business plan of theirs. So that's the big reason that Toyota, for instance, does not have any full EVs out yet. The other reason is sort of a more nuanced argument, and that is that, and I think this the car we have this week, which is the 2020 Prius Prime, is a good example of this. The nuanced argument is that since batteries are expensive, and batteries are a somewhat limited commodity because of the rare earth materials that it takes to make them, and the fact that there's not a lot of battery production capacity in the world. And remember that only about less than 2% of new cars sold in 2019 were EVs. So that took a massive effort to make that many batteries. That you can actually get to your environmental goals, instead of having 10% of your cars be full EVs, you could get there by making a larger percent hybrids or plug-in hybrids, which would require less battery. So the Toyota Prius, for instance, could take someone from consuming 500 gallons a year on average in a Hyundai Elantra or a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic to consuming on average maybe 30 or 40 gallons per year of gasoline. So it's not zero. So this is not like the argument I would make is this is not smoking cessation. This is like moving from cigarettes to vaping. So it's, it's mitigation. And there's a lot, but the reality there is that there's benefit to that. There's benefit to mitigating your carbon emissions. There's benefit to mitigating your gasoline consumption, etc. cold turkey isn't the only way. There are other options to get to there. And so that's largely what Mazda, Honda, and Toyota believe in, is that hybrids and plug-in hybrids can get you the same place, and make the product more widely available and profitable.
All right. Does the Genesis GV80, excuse me, do you think the Genesis GV80 is going to be better than the X5 and GLE?
Ooh, better. I don't know. That's a tough one. I would say I don't expect it to be better. I expect it to be better value.
What stands out in that car for you?
I like the interior. The interior design looks really good. The exterior design is more of a matter of taste. We haven't spent enough time with it. It was dark and on the side of a street. That video was terrible. But it definitely looks good, and it has the bones there, so it's rear wheel drive like the Germans are. The interior quality appears to be there where the Germans are. Genesis has said, however, that they're not going to be competing everywhere with the Germans, so don't expect an M derivative competitor or an AMG from Genesis. They're going in a different direction there, it seems.
Someone else would like to know if you expect any invitations from Genesis in regards to driving events in the next 6 months or so.
Next 6 months, I don't know, but
we
probably will be driving the GV80 specifically, yes, so okay. Most likely.
Do electric cars actually catch fire at a higher rate than ICE cars?
Ooh, good question. We don't honestly know yet. So the sample size is really a little bit too small, and we don't know all the details of what goes on. So, the Taycan, there's a Taycan, I think was probably what caused this question. A Taycan, became inflammable and burst into flames in someone's garage. The deal there, though, is that we still don't know what caused it. I mean, it could have been the car, it could have been the charging infrastructure, it could have been, you plugged in your charger and the terminals weren't wired properly inside the house, and so the house caught on fire first. So
too expensive of a test to do.
Yeah, open still, I think, is the problem.
Okay, Mazda CX-30 or Lexus NX 300?
Ooh, tricky one. I'm honestly not a big fan of the Lexus NX. It's a little small, and even though no entry in that segment is old, because the NX is only really about 4 or 5 years old, the NX feels old compared to everybody else's entries somehow. I think Lexus was aiming in a different location than everybody else was aiming when they redesigned their product, so I think that the CX-30 is much better value, so I would probably go there, and I don't think that the Lexus adds much in terms of overall luxury content for the price tag.
Acura MDX hybrid or Volvo T8 in terms of reliability?
Oh, reliability. Ooh, that's an interesting question. The European cars have never been particularly great in terms of long-term reliability, so you would probably expect the XC90 T8 to be substantially similar to the hybrids from Mercedes and from BMW and Audi, in that meaning less than Lexus. But a lot of folks put Lexus and Acura in the same category, and reliability numbers don't hold that out. So by the general design of the Acura MDX hybrid, I would argue it's probably going to be more reliable than the Volvo. But Acura's had a little bit of some reliability hiccups lately. So I would say if you really, really want a reliable luxury hybrid, and reliability is your prime concern, you should go with Lexus.
Okay. Would you recommend changing CVT fluid every 35 to 40K miles, even though companies like Nissan say the transmission fluid is lifetime?
No, I would say no. I mean, no, owing to the way that they work and what's going on in there, I don't think there's any particular reason to change the fluid out any earlier. For cars that still have transmission fluid dipsticks, you can always monitor the condition of your fluid. It's a very easy thing to do visually, but I wouldn't necessarily say that there was any point in doing that early.
Kind of going back to Lexus, would you prefer 2020 Lexus RX 450h F Sport or Lexus LX?
Ooh.
Very specific.
That's very specific. I mean, they're very different things. The LX is a body-on-frame Toyota Land Cruiser that's been Lexusified, and the RX is, the classic first luxury crossover. I mean, arguably. They're just very different. I would say it really just depends on what you're after. I mean, one's going to be the highest fuel economy in that segment, and one's going to be the lowest. So I mean, that's a hard one.
Will the 2021 Lexus RX be a redesign?
No, from what we see so far, there probably won't be any changes to the RX. It's hard to say.
Sorry. Will the 2021 Q5 get a similar facelift to the 2020 Q7?
It may. We haven't heard exactly. Some manufacturers are better at hiding their refreshes than others, and Audi's usually pretty good. But once one Audi gets a new nose, it's pretty in rapid succession that the others will get refreshed.
How do you feel about the 2015 Chrysler 200C Reelwood all-wheel drive and safety tech and FCA products as a whole?
Oh, it's been a long time since the 200 has been out. 200 or 300?
200.
Oh my.
2015, yeah.
Huh. My goodness, it's been so long. I have forgotten a lot about the Chrysler 200. There was nothing particularly wrong with the 200. I think that if the 200 was cheaper, it would have been just fine. And I mean, it sold over 100,000 units, so it didn't sell poorly in any general sense. But I think that a lot of car companies just decided if they weren't going to be in the top three, they should just kill their sedan and go to something more profitable.
My wife is a new driver and deciding between a 2020 Kona or 2020 Crosstrek. Any thoughts or other suggestions in the segment?
I like the Kona a lot. There's nothing wrong with the Crosstrek. It's one of Subaru's best-selling models, actually, and for good reason. The Crosstrek is inexpensive. It has standard all-wheel drive. I'm not the biggest fan of the CVT or of the EyeSight safety system. Subaru's safety system is a dual camera system rather than a radar-based one. So they use stereo cameras in the windshield. The downside to that system is that they are less predictable in fog or rainy weather. Fog and rainy weather can affect a radar system as well, but it's going to be a lot more able to deal with those inclement weather situations than a purely camera-based system. So in the area I live in, there's a lot of fog in the winter. And those other systems, if they have pedestrian or animal detection or car detection, they would warn you or auto brake for you before a Subaru-style system would be able to, in general terms. I also like the long warranty that we have in the Kona. Generally, the Kona is probably going to be a little more reliable as well.
What is your take on the new E-Class refresh? And is the E53 going to be a good daily driver?
I like the mid-level AMGs. Mercedes has had good luck with their interior redesigns lately. So I'd be fine with it. The new mid-level AMGs I think are the logical daily driver AMGs. The bi-turbo V8 ones where they have what they call an MCT transmission, where they just delete the torque converter out of a regular automatic. They end up being really rough around the edges for daily driving, especially in stop-and-go traffic. But the mid-level AMGs don't have that problem.
When do you think we will see a turbocharged hybrid vehicle, and what are your thoughts on how it would fare?
Oh, we're seeing one soon. So, technically we already have a turbocharged and supercharged hybrid. So all the Volvo hybrids are turbocharged and supercharged. But the new Sorrento hybrid from Kia is going to be a 1.6-liter turbo and Hyundai Kia's latest hybrid system. So we're there.
Will there be... Oh, I lost it. Will there be a new Pathfinder next year?
We don't know. We hope so.
Would you recommend a 99 to 02 Silverado as a starter car?
Ooh. I guess it would depend on the condition. As a starter vehicle, as for a new driver, I wouldn't generally recommend a truck for a new driver. They're going to handle less predictably than a better balanced vehicle. But I guess it would really depend on the condition and the price.
What are your thoughts on the GV80 pricing? Is there any new info or release date?
Nope, no new pricing. We'll probably know more when it goes closer to sale. My expectation is it's probably going to be a little above RX, but definitely closer to RX than X5.
Do you think it would be worth reserving one?
I don't think that there's going to be a huge rush necessarily. I think it would be fine.
Could you give a short update about your feelings about the Clarity?
I've always liked the Clarity. I don't think that the problem with the Clarity that most people have is the look. Specifically the rear wheel skirt. So the rear wheel well has the the top of the wheel well comes down in order to improve aerodynamics, and some people really hate that. They think it looks like a 1980s Buick, and it kind of does in that way. But there are logical reasons for the shapes going on there. So if you want a mid-sized sedan that has a large amount of range and is comfortable inside, I really like the interior design. I think the clarity is just fine. I kind of wish that they just sort of updated the Accord, but Honda's Honda. So
thoughts on the Seltos versus CX-30?
That's an interesting one. I kept thinking about that a lot at the Seltos event. The weird thing about the CX-30 is that the CX-30 is more like the Crosstrek. So when Mazda created their first subcompact vehicle, they took a subcompact car, the Mazda 2, and made a crossover, and that's the CX-3. When they decided to make the CX-30, they realized that the CX-3 was too small, so they wanted something bigger, but they didn't want it CX-5 sized, which is strange. So they took a Mazda 3 hatchback, basically, and poked and prodded it into the CX-30. So it's a little on the big side for the subcompact category. It's sort of this tweener thing, kind of like the Jeep Compass. So a lot of manufacturers are creating a ton of different crossover sizes here and there and everywhere.
Says our stream status is poor.
Sorry, everybody, if you have a poor stream status, but it is what it is. Anyway, moving along. Thank you for that.
I just wanted to make sure.
So the CX-30, I think it's an attractive interior. The infotainment system still drives me to distraction. I don't like the old 6-speed. I think it's getting old. It has a reasonable amount of power. It's gorgeous. It's a very pretty car. I think it's better looking than the Seltos, but I suspect I might buy the Seltos because of the more modern transmissions.
2019 C43 or the 2018 340i? What are your opinions?
Ooh, I wish I could have a combination of the two because I like Mercedes engines better, but I like the ZF transmissions that we have in the BMW, and I like BMW's iDrive better than the systems in the Mercedes, but the Mercedes interior is nicer. That's a tough call. Let me know what you decide.
What are your thoughts on algae-based biofuels, such as biofuels as an alternative to electrification?
In a lot of ways, biofuels, whether we're talking about bio-derived fossil fuel direct replacements or bio-created hydrogen, things like that. There are a number of programs right now working with algae to create hydrogen for hydrogen-powered vehicles. Those make a lot more sense than EVs for long-distance travel. I would say for in-city travel, if you're buying a city car, those would make a lot less sense, really. But theoretically, you could have a much bigger impact on carbon with some of these other technologies. The problem always seems to be the amount of land required and resources required to make enough biofuels for everybody. So there was some research been made that if everybody was going to suddenly run on biodiesel in America, that there isn't enough farmland in the entire world just to satisfy America's consumption of fuel. So we need some other alternative. I don't know if we found that one necessarily, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. The big deal here is that batteries are really not energy dense at all. So the amount of energy contained in 6 kilograms of hydrogen, for instance, which is what the Nexo holds, and the Clarity is not that much far off of it. The new Toyota Mirai for 2021 should have about 6.5 kilograms of hydrogen as well. That amount of energy, even after you factor in the account that the fuel cell is 60% efficient, you're losing 40% of the energy just to nothing. That's still massive compared to the amount of energy in the biggest battery pack that's available. And the average gasoline car contains, 10, 20, 30 times the amount of available energy that we find in the average battery. So density is a big problem. You've got 20 pounds of fuel in a hydrogen car. You can go 380 miles with it. You add another 20 or 30 pounds of hydrogen, you could go 600 miles. That does not scale the same way with batteries. To go an extra 300 miles with batteries, you'd be adding thousands of pounds. So it is a problem.
Will you be reviewing the Cybertruck?
If we ever get one, sure. If it ever happens, it's not going to look like the pictures look, but sure.
Thoughts on Supra versus RCF?
Oh, I'd Supra.
Lots of rumors that the 6th gen Toyota 4Runner will be based off the Forester platform, and they pushed it back. Is that true?
I doubt that it would be. There have always been consistent rumors. The Forester platform would be a terrible platform to create a 4Runner off of, so it's unlikely. The most likely answer is that the 4Runner, the Sequoia, the Tundra, and the Tacoma are all going to continue to be closely related, with the Land Cruiser being a cousin.
RAV4 hybrid or hybrid plug-in?
That's a good question. We don't know what the pricing on the plug-in hybrid is going to be like, but it does seem pretty exciting, so be sure and stay tuned.
Do you think we'll see a redesigned Honda Civic by the end of this year?
No.
Just flat out no.
No. Not when they just gave us a refreshed Civic Type R. It's going to be a no.
Any word on the 2021 WRX and STI?
Not that I have heard.
Any EVs you'd recommend that would have a long-term reliability?
Any of the EVs really should be fine. It depends on your usage case, obviously. Generally speaking, the more mainstream EVs seem to be the highest in reliability, but have the lowest sample size. So this should be kept in mind too. So statistically speaking, so far, the Hyundai, Kia, and GM EVs have had better reliability overall than Tesla EVs. But remember that Tesla outsells them by a lot, so we have much better metrics on Teslas as far as overall reliability, and we don't have that same quality of metric for some of the alternatives. And you should also keep in mind that they're very different kinds of vehicles, and generally speaking, luxury vehicles are going to have lower reliability than mainstream cars because there's more to go wrong. So, you would expect a Tesla Model S to have lower reliability than a mainstream car because it has an air suspension, because it has, the enormous screen that seems to be having some lamination problems, just more stuff on it that you don't find on the mainstream car. So that anytime you add more stuff, you have more points of failure. So,
what are your thoughts on Acura as a brand?
I'm eager to see where Acura is going to go. I've always wondered why there's not more money spent on Acura, but it seems to go with the Honda and Toyota ethos that everything they do should make some money somewhere, and that's kind of a different mentality than we see currently with Hyundai and Genesis. So with Genesis, it seems that Hyundai is totally willing to just blow money on Genesis to make it work, and with Acura, it seems like to really succeed, they're going to need more money from Honda. And I think they need more specialty platforms. Every Acura has at least a distant cousin in the Honda world, for better or for worse. It helps lower manufacturing and design costs, but it ends up meaning that the brand can never be fully separated from that perception that it's just a gussied up Honda.
Do you think Nissan will improve with the new CEO?
Too early to tell.
Which one's better? Does Civic RS give the feel or sport car? I'm totally reading that wrong.
Huh?
Yeah. The Nissan Frontier for this year, is it still the same?
The Frontier is the same Frontier as before, but it has a new engine. So they got the 9-speed automatic from the Titan, and they got a new 3.8 liter direct injection V6 engine. So drivetrain new, truck old.
How did upgrading to 285 profile tires help in ride and handling of your Durango?
Generally speaking, the larger the contact patch on the ground, the better the handling. And lateral width, tire sectional width rather, and tread width is definitely a strong component of that. So generally speaking, and this is a very generalized statement that has asterisks everywhere, but generally speaking, same vehicle, wider tires, handle better. That's usually the formula.
How would you draw boundaries between Camry, Avalon, and the Lexus ES350? When should one go for each of them?
Oh, that's a tricky one. The Avalon's the one I don't understand anymore, to be perfectly honest, because the Avalon used to be notably bigger than the Camry, and all the Avalon seems to have really turned into is the Camry with the V6 standard that looks a little bit different. And I'm kind of disappointed in that, and that's probably why the Avalon's not selling terribly well. The Camry got bigger and bigger and bigger in every generation. And now the Camry size-wise is beyond where Avalon's used to be. But we don't have any truly big cars in America in the mainstream because of the way that average fuel economy regulations work in America. So there's no real incentive for Tow to create a stretched LS-sized Avalon, which I think really would be kind of cool and would be back where the Avalon could have or should have been. And then the Lexus ES is logically the one that for the person that wants a roomy interior in a luxury car, high reliability, but doesn't care about handling as much as someone that might buy a 5 Series or an E-Class.
Do you think you will be test driving the X5 plug-in hybrid when it becomes available?
Yes, we had the last one, so we probably will have the new one.
Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. When are you doing a full review?
Full review, I don't know, but I will be driving it next Wednesday. And I don't know when we're going to be allowed to talk about it, but you should expect to see that video within 2 weeks, I would say.
What do you think between the 2020 Highlander XLE versus the Telluride EX?
I would say it depends on how many people you have and how often you want to use the third row. The big difference between the Telluride and the Highlander is going to be the third row accommodation. And the cargo areas. The cargo area is significantly bigger in the Telluride. Still too small for a family of 6 to put their luggage back there, but significantly bigger. And you'll find over 7 inches more legroom in the Telluride than in the Highlander. So it's a significantly bigger vehicle inside. I would say that if you are focused on fuel efficiency or you want something smaller, you're not really going to be using the third row very much, then something like the Highlander, especially the Highlander Hybrid, would be a good buy. But if you want the extra room or you like the styling, then the Telluride is going to be the way to go.
Acura RDX or Lexus RX?
I'd probably RDX.
Porsche Taycan review soon?
I don't think that we will end up having a Taycan review. The main reason is that it's a little too expensive and doesn't sell in high enough numbers. So if you want to see my initial thoughts on the Taycan, then you can go over to TFL Car, because I do have a video over there, so you can actually just hunt for Alex and Otto's Porsche Taycan, and it'll take you over there. Roman Micah from TFL Car didn't have anybody to go to Germany to drive the car, so I said, hey, I will do that for you. But it was logical to put that video on their channel since they have a more enthusiast, more Porsche-focused viewership base. And here at Alex and Otto's, we just don't. So there we go. Now, I may have a Panamera wagon and a Macan at some point here soon, but we will be focusing on the least expensive models in their lineup if we do end up doing any Porsche videos, not the opposite end of the spectrum. And the last Taycan that I drove was over $200,000, so it's not a high volume car.
When can we expect to see a new Rogue?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. There's lots of rumors, but nothing definite, so hopefully soon.
Accord versus Sonata?
That's tricky, and I was just recording that video this morning. I like the Accord's interior and exterior styling. I think it's more restrained and elegant than what we see in the Sonata. The Sonata's got that enormous wide-fish grille thing that is a little disconcerting at first on the outside. You walk by and you think that the car is going to eat you. It's a little hungry. But then the Sonata's interior, I think, is nicer than the Accord's, and its infotainment system is more modern and bigger and flashier, and it has a huge LCD instrument cluster as well, which you'll find in actually most of the trims of Sonata, actually. The base model doesn't have it. The next one up, it's optional, and then the ones after that, it's standard. And the Sonata also has more rear seat headroom and a bigger trunk. So it's an interesting, I don't know, that's a difficult one. I think if you want the 2-liter turbo Accord, there's no cross in the Sonata yet because the N-Line isn't out yet. The 2-liter turbo Accord is great. The base Accord, you have to deal with the 1.5-liter turbo and CVT combo, which is not my favorite. That's a really, really tough call. I would say 2-liter turbo Accord, wait for the N line. If you're looking at a less expensive model, then get the Sonata with the 1.6 liter turbo and the regular automatic.
Okay. For the Atlas or Tiguan, can they last 200K?
Ooh, that's a good question.
200K without major problems.
Without major problems. We don't know yet. They're not really that old. I wouldn't be surprised if they could. The transmission is the same transmission that we find under the hood of many Toyota products. It's an Aisin transmission. Aisin is Toyota's essentially captive transmission manufacturer. They make all the transmissions for every Toyota and Lexus product. They also make transmissions for Volkswagen, Volvo, and a bunch of other companies. So I wouldn't have any major worries about the transmission. Unless you're driving your Atlas crazy hard, you should probably be fine.
Okay, Doc Marty would like to know, will the Model Y change everything?
We don't know yet. It could. The Model Y is finally the Tesla that I think should have been second. They created the S. They wanted an SUV, so they created the X, and the X never went where they wanted it to go. I think the Model Y should have been that next car. The eternal question will be, can the rest of Tesla hold it together? Can the quality stay there? As they're broadening their customer base to shoppers that are just looking for a car rather than specifically looking for an EV. Can the quality, can the experience stay consistent? So we'll see.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the 2021 F-150?
We'll know more when we see it. I mean, it looks good. It looks kind of like they've gone with a slightly rounded approach, sort of a little Ram 1500 thrown in there. We don't know what the drivetrain changes will be. With Ford, sometimes we see drivetrain changes first, then a body change. Sometimes we'll see a body change first, then drivetrain changes. So we may have to wait an extra year to see the whole package deal, basically, on the new F-150. We'll definitely see the new body soon. We're seeing the spy shots. But because we haven't seen any drivetrain updates, any engine or transmission updates yet, I suspect those are going to come maybe a year into the F-150 like we've seen in the past. So we may get the new body and new shell, but if you want a hybrid F-150 or a plug-in hybrid F-150 or anything like that, that may be a little bit later than we think.
For a family of 5, would you recommend the Chrysler Pacifica all-wheel drive or Kia Telluride? The 3 children are all under 12 years old.
3 kids is a little tricky for a crossover. Minivan that's kind of minivan territory there, I would say. Remember that the minivan is going to give you considerably more cargo area, and the third row is going to be much more suitable if you keep your car longer. So if you keep your car well into the high school years, and you want a little bit more room to stretch out, stick extra family members in there, etc., I would probably go for the minivan.
Will you be testing the new 2020 Ridgeline with the new 9-speed automatic?
We probably will have it. Honda has not said whether they're going to be giving it to anybody yet because the Ridgeline is not selling anywhere near where they wanted it to be. So they kind of, manufacturers will sometimes brush low-selling models under the carpet a little bit.
Do you think it's too early for Genesis to be reliable over Lexus or Toyota?
So I think I know the basis of this question, where if you recall in the J.D. Power 3-year ownership survey, in the 3rd year of ownership, Genesis actually beat Lexus in terms of number of problems per vehicle, and that somehow caused people to lose their hair. Not unexpected. Genesis has always had high reliability marks, and the direct answer to this question would be no, and the reason that it's no is because nothing at Genesis is necessarily that new in the lineup. Even though the Genesis brand hasn't been around that long, the 2 main cars in the brand started as Hyundai models. The Hyundai Genesis and the Hyundai Equus turned into the Genesis G80 and G90. So we have lots of long-term metrics on the Genesis and the Equus before they became Genesis models. And reliability has always been high there. And reliability is actually very high in the Hyundai brand specifically as well. So Hyundai and Kia have also been getting excellent short-term, long-term, and predicted reliability metrics. All 3 have actually been high for all 3 of those brands.
Why do you think the Hyundai Veracruz crossover failed, and will the Palisade fare better?
That's a good question. I don't know why Exactly. Some cars don't hit right in the market, and they can be too ahead of their time. They can be not quite what everybody seems to want, but there are definitely cars that make me scratch my head as to why they didn't work. Like the Mazda CX-9, we're working on that video review right now, and I don't know if anybody else out there knows, but the CX-9 won the award for the slowest selling three-row crossover in 2019. The only vehicle in 2019 that sold worse, that had 3 rows, was the Ford Flex, and the Ford Flex had been discontinued and out of production. So the CX-9 somehow is the absolute floor in that segment, and by an enormous margin. And I honestly don't understand why. I think the CX-9 is lovely. It's fun to drive. It's fuel efficient. It's absolutely gorgeous. It has a great interior. The pricing's good, etc. But somehow it just does not sell well at all. Other manufacturers failed due to timing. So like the Chrysler Pacifica in the first generation, when it was a crossover, not a minivan, it seemed like it was just a bit ahead of its time. Nobody else had a 3-row crossover thing, so everybody lampooned it as a jacked up minivan with all-wheel drive, which basically is what every 3-row crossover out there is. And it didn't sell well, I think, as a result. So there's always timing in this, but I think the Palisade will be fine if they can get the production numbers up.
Okay. Recently, I had a 60,000-mile service for my Subaru Forester, and it cost around $2,000. Is it mandatory to do such expensive service every 30K for all cars?
Not with all cars. I guess it would depend on what exactly they charged you for at the service. That seems a little high for a regular service. Now that said, some cars out there, especially cars with all-wheel drive, will have higher service costs than a front-wheel drive car. So that is something important to keep in mind. So, a Subaru, insert your Subaru model here versus a front-wheel drive competitor. The front-wheel drive competitor is probably going to have lower long-term maintenance and repair costs just because it's simpler. So there are some extra costs associated with that all-wheel drive ability.
Wait for 2021 Atlas or buy 2020 Infiniti QX60?
I guess it would depend on what you're after exactly. That's kind of an interesting twist there, since the Pathfinder is more of the Atlas, variant there. I would probably go with the Atlas. I like the practicality that the Atlas offers, and I think the overall driving experience is better than the Pathfinder and QX60. The Atlas has no sporty pretensions. It's the big family-sized 3-row crossover, but it's big and comfy, and I think that the overall look is good. So I might Atlas.
So someone just says 2021 Sorrento. I don't know if they want your opinion
or
if you're actually going to be filming it.
So the 2021 Sorrento, I will be in Geneva when the cover's pulled off. Although that's a little anticlimactic since we now all know how it looks like. So the Sorrento is going to remain. There were a lot of rumors that the Sorrento would die, that the Telluride would replace it, but apparently Hyundai and Kia have decided to go all in on the crossovers, and they've got everything. So we've got the itty bitty Soul, then we've got the Nero. That's the Soul and Nero. Are they crossovers? I don't know. Whatever. They're in the lineup. The Soul, the Nero. We have the Seltos. We have the Sorrento, the Sportage, the Telluride, the blah blah blah. They're all there. So the Sorrento is going to be the small 3-row crossover. We don't know whether the 3rd row is going to be optional or not, because that's the one thing Kia is missing is a Santa Fe direct cross. So maybe not optional 3rd row. It's going to be about Highlander sized. We know there's going to be a 2.5-liter turbo with their new 8-speed dual clutch. We know there's going to be a hybrid. It's going to be a turbocharged hybrid. We know there's going to be a plug-in hybrid probably as well. And for other world markets, there's going to be a diesel, which we absolutely will not get here.
What are your thoughts or experience on a pedal commander in cars like the Camry?
A pedal commander?
Yeah. I'm
not sure what a pedal commander is. You have stumped me. I'm sorry. Is this is the performance chip thing. I'm not a huge fan of those kinds of things. They supposedly alter the responsiveness of the throttle. It's more snake oil than actual performance, to be honest. Most cars, if you floor it that quickly, you're not going to get a huge benefit in a system that's supposed to be optimizing anything. So I would not bother. Save your money.
Any thoughts on four-way stops versus roundabouts?
Oh, roundabouts all the way.
I got the new 2020 Soul, and the CVT needed replacing within 2 weeks off the lot. Have you heard of any others having the same issue?
I've not, actually. I've heard anecdotally that there have been some complaints on forums about their CVT. But then I would remind everybody that any new car can have a problem right off the lot. It does happen with every brand out there, including very reliable ones. It hasn't affected their predicted reliability ratings from Consumer Reports or initial reliability from J.D. Power. So if we want to know true long-term reliability on Hyundai and Kia's new CVT, that's not going to come for about 3 to 5 years from now, because we just started seeing that CVT. I would say, however, that they do have a very long warranty, so I would not be overly concerned about it at this point for the average buyer out there, because the average buyer keeps their car under 10 years and under 100,000 miles, which means the entire time that you, the first buyer, buy the car, it's going to be covered by their warranty. So I would personally not be that worried about it, but we won't really know for a while. That's the ultimate problem with new cars. And a lot of people ask, why do we never talk about reliability here at Alex and Autos? Well, the reality is that it would be disingenuous to try and talk about it, really, because Toyota just released a new Highlander. How reliable is it? I don't know, because it hasn't been around long enough. You can say that manufacturers have reputations for reliability. That's totally something we can talk about. And at the moment, those would be companies like Toyota, Honda, Kia, and Hyundai, oddly enough, are going to be the 4 mainline manufacturers that have the current reputation in America for good reliability, short, medium, and long term in relative terms. And Hyundai and Kia are the recent additions to that picture. But Honda's had some pretty bad reliability problems recently. I mean, they had problems with their 5-speed automatic, their 6-speed automatic, the 9-speed automatic, the 1.5-liter turbo. So every manufacturer can have a problem now and then. Toyota's even had stumbles of their own with various software issues, etc. So the ultimate problem is that for specific brand new models, you won't know until they're well into production, and at that point, I'm not going to be reviewing them because they're not new. So, manufacturers release a new car, I review the new car, someone else releases a new car, I review that car, review that car, review that car, and on and on and on. We don't always go back and re-review the car after the reliability numbers come in. And talking about it in that way wouldn't necessarily be as fair, since we don't have reliability numbers for everything out there yet. So a lot of reliability talk out there is on predicted reliability and future hopes and dreams. Or we can talk about short-term numbers, which people don't like. People dislike the J.D. Power survey because it's a short-term survey. But in reality, that's going to be the best number for this particular situation, because we're talking about new cars.
Right. Thoughts on the 2020 Highlander Platinum Hybrid versus the MDX Hybrid or the QX60 Hybrid?
Oh, so many hybrids here. Yeah. So, does the QX60 hybrid still exist? I thought the QX60 hybrid was dead. Any rate, the QX60 hybrid was kind of an odd duck anyway. I was not a huge fan of that one. It had a regular CVT, not terribly powerful. I really didn't like the way that system drove overall, and the fuel economy benefit just wasn't really there. The MDX hybrid's kind of an interesting twist because it borrows parts out of Acura's parts bin. It has a nice sporty feel to it that we don't see in the other hybrids that are out there. But if you want better fuel economy, and the best fuel economy, that's obviously going to be in the Toyota hybrid system. The Toyota hybrid system is also long-term going to be the most reliable in general terms. Again, based on track record, though, because it's brand new. So we won't know, but one should logically expect it to be the most reliable.
So would you choose the Toyota RAV4 hybrid or the CR-V hybrid?
Now that's a tricky one, because intrinsically both models could be quite reliable. The Honda hybrid system has been very reliable as well. There are multiple different ways of hybridizing. There is the planetary gear set style, and Toyota, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler all use that style hybrid system. So hybrid reliability in a Chrysler Pacifica hybrid, a Highlander hybrid, a Ford Fusion hybrid, or Escape hybrid, those actually all end up being very, very similar because the design of the system is very, very simple. The Honda system is arguably just as simple. It's a very different design, but it's arguably just as simple as well. The hybrid systems that get more complicated are like Nissan's hybrid system, the Hyundai Kia hybrid system, the hybrid system that we find in the Ford Explorer. Because they're mixing a traditional automatic transmission with hybrid parts. So that could be less reliable overall than the simpler systems that we find in Toyota's vehicles. But I would have no particular problem with the CR-V hybrid. The big difference with the CR-V is going to be it uses a traditional mechanical all-wheel drive system. So that has extra maintenance costs long-term associated with it, but it's going to have more predictable wet weather or snowy weather performance. So if you're really on a slick surface like ice, or you're trying to get out of a rut in the snow, it's going to be able to deliver more consistent power to the rear axle, so it's going to be more sure-footed. But reliability probably is going to be a little below, but not far off the RAV4.
Do you think the CR-V will lose resale value over its engine?
I don't think so. We haven't seen it. It's not a pervasive problem.
When will North America get an RSQ3, Canada specifically?
We don't know. It doesn't appear that they're that interested in sending us that model.
Would you recommend a Silverado or an F-150?
Ooh, tricky. I guess it depends on what you're gonna. It depends on a lot. There's so many different ways you can configure. I would say, in general terms, I like the F-150 a little better than the Silverado.
Oh, is that the end of your?
That's the end of my answer. Too many specifics. Engine, body. What use case? There's so many different ways you can configure either of those trucks. That's a tricky one.
And I have some more hybrid questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Any word on the CR-V hybrid, RAV4 Prime, or Highlander hybrid for sale date, prices? Any thoughts on a Sienna hybrid?
We don't have any dates. No. Yeah, unfortunately. So stay tuned.
I normally keep a vehicle for 10 years or so. With that in mind, would you recommend a Toyota Prius?
The Prius should be just fine for 10 years. The Prius has been one of the most reliable vehicles ever built, actually, over its long run. So regardless of the year, the Prius has been one of the least expensive to own and maintain. Not just on fuel economy, but also on repairs. So yeah, sure.
Will the RAV4 Prime be popular and hard to get your hands on when it first comes out? What will be its biggest competition?
We don't really know. That's a good question. It's quite a different thing for Toyota to be doing to make a performance hybrid. It's arguably Toyota's first performance hybrid. So we don't really know how it's going to be priced. We don't know how much it's going to cost. We don't know what the range is. A lot of things we don't know. As far as competitors, that's also tricky. It's logically going to compete with things like the Mazda CX-5 Turbo, but also something like perhaps an EV. It's such a difficult thing to comment on because they're going for over 300 horsepower, some electric range, so obviously green credentials and that EV thing, but then they're also going for performance, so we'll see.
Among small SUVs, which would you recommend for long life and reliability?
There's the classic answer that the RAV4 is hard to go wrong with. So if you're looking for something that you're going to keep forever and you really, really are focused on reliability, dependability questions, I would probably RAV4 hybrid. It's going to be, logically, the hybrid model of the RAV4 should be more reliable than the non-hybrid.
Tiguan or a Santa Fe?
I would probably Santa Fe. It's bigger, so the value proposition is great on the Santa Fe because it's actually a half step up in size, but it's priced more like a compact crossover.
Any comments on the RDX infotainment issues?
I haven't heard anything specifically. I don't like the way that it works, but I haven't heard anything specifically wrong with it.
When does the new Grand Cherokee come out?
Ooh, we don't really know. That's really a question. FCA just seems to just want to keep that guy hanging on forever.
What is your view of the Kia Niro hybrid as a commuter? 1 hour drive to work and 1 hour back home.
We know a lot of people that have Niro hybrids for long distance commutes, and they seem to be just fine. The Ioniq is going to be more efficient, mind you, if you're looking at that family of vehicles. And the Prius is probably going to be slightly more reliable long term, but the Niro has been just fine. I know people that already have 100 and something thousand miles on their hybrid Niro with no issues.
Do you think all ICE vehicles will end up with CVTs of some type?
No, not all of them, but most of the smaller ones probably.
Den God Sanash says hi. Hello.
Hi.
Is the Toyota Lexus 3.5 liter V6 made in USA or Japan?
I believe it's made in Japan.
I don't know why I said it that way.
I believe it's made in Japan. It's my understanding. Toyota's got a lot of factories everywhere that produce random things. So, like, you could buy a RAV4 and it could be made in America or it could be made in Japan. You could buy a RAV4 hybrid, it could be made here or made there, and you don't know till you actually look at the sticker to see where it was made.
Can an Atkinson cycle engine be turbocharged?
Yep, not a problem.
Do you think traditional sedans like the Camry should get trunk openings like the A7 in future generations?
The trouble and the rationale for not having a liftback in the average car is that it reduces torsional rigidity. So by having a trunk opening in the back rather than a huge section of the car that opens up, you can actually make the vehicle stiffer and sturdier and weigh less than if it had a liftback. So the liftback is always going to add some structural design compromises. That's why we don't see too many of them, to be honest, because that's a really big opening when you look at the A7.
When will Toyota finally update the Sienna?
We don't know. There are lots of rumors, but probably not till 2022 model year would be my guess. We're already starting to see 2021 Toyotas sort of dribbling out, so it's not among the dribbles.
Do you think you guys will get a Model Y when it comes out?
We won't get one, but we probably will definitely rent one at the very least. We do have a Mach-E on order, so we'll see.
Accord 2.0 Turbo versus CR-V EX. Which one is fun to drive and practical?
Oh, Accord 2.0, yeah.
There's a lot of comments about minivans here. Do you believe that they are dead?
The sales numbers don't indicate there are still hundreds of thousands of minivans being shifted every year. Most of them are Chryslers, so mind you.
Is it worth waiting for the Polestar 2 to be available in the U.S.?
I keep wondering when it's going to happen. I mean, if you want an EV now or anytime soon, I would probably not wait.
What do you think of Toyota Corolla Cross?
I'm not familiar with the Toyota Corolla Cross. I mean, that's a Europe-only product, as I recall.
Will Canada or North America ever get the RSQ3, more specifically the coupe version?
Probably not the coupe version, ever.
Oh, someone likes my hair color. Thanks. Is Acura reliable? Consumer Reports put them near bottom.
Yeah, that was kind of a shock that CR put them at the bottom of the list. Acura's definitely had some issues lately, but remember that there's a lot of variance in the way that metrics are put together and the way that every reliability outfit out there monitors and measures reliability is subject to a little bit of complaining from every angle. So I'm not overly concerned necessarily about their reliability. We need to dig more into exactly what caused them to be at the bottom there.
Will Nissan bring Juke back to USA?
No, Juke is dead for us.
Volkswagen Alltrack or Tiguan, which is better for long term?
Long term, they should be basically the same. They're not very far off one another, to be honest, in design.
Forester versus Outback.
I'd Outback.
You haven't reviewed the Lexus RX. Will you review it again? Will you review it again soon?
We have an RX and an RXL video on the channel. You might want to hunt around for that.
I think he was saying that you haven't done one in a while and is curious if you would do an updated one.
I think the RXL video we had was a 2019, maybe. Anyway, we probably won't until it gets refreshed. There hasn't really been any change to the RX other than the addition of the tiny third row. So we probably won't do anything on it until it gets redesigned.
If you weren't an auto journalist, what would you be doing?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, Nissan... Sorry.
Could be a sommelier.
Any updates on your Nexo?
On our Nexo. My memory is bad. I think that there's a video that we put together that has not come out yet. Does that ring a bell?
Yes,
there we go.
Yes.
So there is an update video on the Nexo.
It's on hold.
It's going to be a very boring video because the video basically says that nothing's gone wrong. So there we go. I still like it. It's comfortable. It's quiet. It's easy to live with. It runs on hydrogen. That's kind of its shtick. Not much else to report.
Why are automatic transmissions now more fuel efficient than manuals?
The big reason is they've reduced a lot of parasitic losses inside the transmission. So materials technology's gotten better. So tolerances are much tighter than they ever were before, etc. Thanks to electronic control systems, we don't have as much pumping loss for hydraulically actuated everythings like we used to in the past. They've also gotten much more efficient in torque converter design and torque converter lockup. So the average modern automatic transmission does not spend very much time with the torque converter freewheeling. The clutch is closed most of the time. And then lastly, just due to the packaging realities and the fact that a computer can row through 9 or 10 or whatever gears, and that's a little bit more difficult to place on a stick, we have a broader range of ratios available. So that means you've got more aggressive first gears for better starts, and you've got some really crazy tall gears at the top to improve highway fuel economy. So all that packaged together yields better fuel economy than the average manual these days.
From what I've heard, would you agree it's best to avoid DCT transmissions?
Not necessarily. It depends on the design of the DCT. There have been some good ones, there have been some bad ones, there have been some okay ones. Ford definitely stunk up everybody on their power shift transmission. It seemed good at the beginning. I liked it the way that it drove. And then they started falling apart at some breathtaking rates. Volkswagen had a few stumbling problems with the DSG initially, their dual clutch transmission. But since then, Volkswagen's DSGs have actually been just fine. Volkswagen uses quite a lot of them, so does Porsche. We haven't seen any issues there. The Hyundai Kia Motor Group loves DCTs. Their 7-speed has some drivability issues, I would say, just because of its design. It drives like a manual because it is a manual. But we are seeing a lot of R&D moved that way, and the big reason is efficiency. So generally speaking, a DCT of comparable design will always be more efficient than a traditional automatic. So that's why, for instance, in the new Sorrento, we actually see an 8-speed DCT in it rather than a traditional automatic. And even Honda has gotten into the DCT game. They have that one DCT in an Acura, and then they have a different DCT in the Acura hybrids. So far, we haven't seen any reliability issues with the Honda 8-speed or 7-speed DCT. Limited reliability issues with the Hyundai Kia 7-speed. And I don't really suspect that there'll be any major issues with their new 8-speed.
What are your thoughts on a 2005-2006 Honda Accord as a first car?
That should be a fine first car. I mean, the tricky bit with first car is always buying used versus buying new. You're not going to have the active safety features that we would find on a new car. So definitely keep that in mind. Depending on what kind of driver this is, if they're a young driver that's a first-time driver and a first-time car owner, or whether they've got more miles under the belt and they're just finally buying their first new car. The newer car, even if it's smaller than the older one, may not be less safe because of modern safety systems. And remember that the active safety technologies like autonomous braking and lane centering and all that kind of stuff you'll find on new cars and you generally won't find on a used car.
Did the Honda Fit get discontinued?
I don't think we have official confirmation on that yet. I would not be surprised, though, because it doesn't sell well compared to the HR-V. So the future for that kind of thing from Honda is definitely the HR-V.
I'm thinking about getting the 2020 Nissan Frontier with the new engine, but should I wait a little longer to get the new redesigned Frontier?
I would probably get the redesigned Frontier. That would be just me, though.
Which crossovers are more reliable, Hyundai or Kia?
Identical, because they're often made in the same factories, to be honest. The engines and transmissions are identical. So if you're debating between those two, there's no statistical difference really for most models. The variance that we see in brand reliability ratings between Kia and Hyundai has more to do with their sales mix and the kind of areas that they compete in than true reliability differences between Sonata versus Optima. They should be identical. Telluride versus Palisade, they should be identical, etc.
Is there a sportier Accord coming?
Not that we know of.
What is the most affordable 3-row SUV with the best gas mileage?
Most affordable 3-row would definitely be the Dodge Journey. It's really cheap. Best gas mileage is going to be the Toyota Highlander Hybrid.
What feature EV trucks are coming this year?
Ooh, this year. We don't know this year. We are definitely going to be seeing some of those crazy low-volume trucks from some of the companies that I forget their names, the really square ones that are out there. We will see the Rivian truck supposedly shipping this calendar year. That's probably going to be the major one. The Cybertruck is a ways out. The Cybertruck that everybody's seen, it absolutely positively cannot go to production just for a variety of legal reasons. It does not meet FMVSS standards for headlamps, tail lamps, pedestrian safety in Europe, etc. So it's not going to look the way that it looks. I mean, it may look futuristic. It may have some of those same vibes, but we're not going to see exactly that truck. So we're going to have to wait until we start seeing, spy shots of mules rolling down. I don't think that we're going to personally see a plug-in Ford or an EV Ram or an EV Chevy this calendar year. I think that'll be later.
Which manufacturers would you say are clearly lagging behind in terms of electrification?
I don't know if I can actually call it lagging behind. I think that some companies have decided to take a very cautious approach to electrification, and a lot of their caution is grounded, I think, in solid business practice. So, for instance, some people give Toyota an incredibly hard time for not having a full EV. But the argument from Toyota holds water to me, which is, why would we make a full EV now when EVs are still sell less than manual transmissions in America? So less than 2% of the market's an EV. There's a lot of hoopla around Tesla, but that's not where Toyota is necessarily. So why would we do that when it's a small part? Why would we do that when it's not going to be profitable? Look how much money everybody loses on making EVs. So Toyota does not like making cars that are intrinsically losses. And then there's the environmental pushback from Toyota saying, well, it's great that people sell EVs, but having 25 or 30% of our Toyota RAV4s and an expected 20% of Toyota Highlanders be hybrids that are getting 40 miles per gallon is having a bigger impact on the environment than another manufacturer selling 10,000 EVs. So there's some logic in that too. I mean, the Camry, the Corolla, the Highlander, and the RAV4 all sell about a quarter or more of their production is hybrid. And so that is having a huge impact on emissions as far as the Toyota brand goes. But it doesn't sell, it's not sexy, it's not flashy, it's not futuristic. I think that's why people think that companies are being left behind. I would start worrying about being left behind when EV sales are 10-15% of the sales mix. Diesels vastly far outsell battery electric vehicles in America, and no one has come out and said, gee, Honda, Toyota, you're really behind on your diesel sales because you don't have a diesel RAV4. Why are you so far behind the ball on the diesel game? So I think it's the same thing.
Nissan and Infiniti seems to have lost their mojo. Is there anything to look forward to in these is there anything to look forward to from these brands?
Yeah, they have.
That's the answer.
Yeah, they have. I mean, limited areas to look forward to, but definitely some things coming forward. So the push that Nissan has been making towards electrification is interesting. Nissan has a very long history of making EVs. The Leaf is one of the oldest EVs and actually still has the largest, global sales of EVs. Tesla's rapidly approaching them, though, mind you. But Their plan now is for a dedicated EV platforms for luxury vehicles and mainstream vehicles, and a big push towards plug-in hybrids and serial hybrids. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But they don't have. It doesn't appear that they have the money to put behind it, because their former CEO seemed to be really interested in using money for acquisitions or return to investors, etc. Not as much corporate profit was being plowed back into R&D as probably they should have been. So some of their products do seem a little late. But that said, I think that the Altima is fine. The Altima sells well in its segment. The Altima all-wheel drive is the reason that we have a Camry all-wheel drive. It's not the Legacy. Subaru Legacy is not the reason we have a Camry all-wheel drive. It's all about the Altima. So in certain segments, they do sell well. But I also think that in certain segments, Nissan should just cut their losses and just leave. Like the pickup truck segment, Nissan should just give up the Titan, I think. If it were me and I was looking at the dollars and cents there, from a financial side, it just makes no sense for Nissan to be spending any money on trucks. The money they've spent went nowhere. They had to pare back the line. They had to cancel the diesel. They had to cancel the standard cab. They had to cancel the 8-foot bed. It just has not seemingly gone well. And nothing that they seem to do there makes it any better. So sometimes it's time to go.
Will you comment on the RAV4 safety concern according to the YouTube clip Moose Test? Also, what is that?
So
that second question's me.
Okay. So if you didn't know, in Sweden there's this thing called the Moose Test, where the theory behind this is, in a high-speed driving maneuver, a moose is coming, enters the road, and you have to make a quick swerve to the right or the left, and then a quick swerve back into your lane. And the RAV4, in that particular test, as configured there, had more tip than it should have. However, in reproductions of that test, and I know the magazine they're talking about, Technikens in reproductions of that test, RAV4s have not always had that problem. Toyota claims that was, if I'm recalling this detail exactly, which I may be wrong, people can correct me here, there was a test made on one that did not have stability control software, which would not have applied to American market cars, because all of ours have stability control. And the 2020 RAV4 also passed the Moose Test. So any talk about that was theoretically related to a specific stability control software version in the 2019 model year, if it did have stability control. But someone can correct me down there in the comment section below. My recollection was that it did not have stability control software. Very often, cars that fail that particular test are cars that don't have stability control by default.
And to confirm, there is no actual moose.
No, there's no.
Okay, good.
Yes, there's lots of moose. It's there's lots of carnage, sausage everywhere. Everywhere.
Why not list the width and length of the driver's seat cushion in your reviews?
Mainly because we are already listing a lot, and that would be Alex that would have to do that listing.
And you would have to see all those lists too. Any news on the we already asked about the RAV4 Prime. Correct?
Oh, I see one here about RAV4 gas tank issues I'll quickly talk about. So what's up with the RAV4 gas tank issues? Personally, we have never had the issue, and I know this because I have hammered everybody that's been driving the RAV4. It's like 6 of us that drive the RAV4 here all the time, and I have it hammered into everybody. When you fill up the car, look at the gas gauge. Did it actually fill all the way up? Make sure it's way past full. It's got to go way past. I mean, did you actually stop there? When did it stop? And I'm quizzing everybody all the time. Did the pump handle stop? Did it not stop? What did it do? Nobody's had the problem. Go figure. The theory here is that the filler neck that actually connects the tank to the opening where you stick the gas tank nozzle in is slightly too small, or slightly smaller than normal, and therefore the gas pump, which has a very, very sensitive trigger internally to turn off when the gas tank is full, is triggering prematurely. And so supposedly some people are having troubles getting their gas tanks full if the gas pump is ultra sensitive. Now, mind you, this may not apply to California because we do have slightly different nozzles in California than everywhere else in the country. So That just occurred to me in my head. So if anybody's in California and they say they have this problem, let us know down there. Or you can always email us at itsaconspiracy@alexandautos.com. But in California, we have vapor recovery nozzles. So the vapor recovery nozzles here have a big springy thing that goes over around the nozzle, and you have to really push the gas filler thing in there pretty aggressively, which means that it's further down the neck than in other states. And that is to recapture the vapors from the gas tank. As you're filling the gas tank up, gasoline vapors come out. And so in California, for environmental reasons, these are then recaptured, thrown back into the tank, and then dealt with in an environmentally friendly manner. Whereas in other places, they're allowed to just off-gas into the atmosphere, and that's a component of smog creation. So that's one of the reasons that like LA doesn't have as big of a smog problem as they did in the 70s, is partially because of these vapor recovery nozzles and the other evaporative emissions systems in modern cars. So that may play into this because we have a slightly different filler nozzle, but we, so far, after 9,500 miles?
Yeah.
9,500 miles-ish, have never had the problem. Go figure. But that said, the gas tank's only been filled like 20 times because 10,000 miles is only like 19, 20 tanks of gas. So there we go.
What is the cheapest, quietest, and most reliable sedan or SUV? So I guess they want the combination of the three, your top choice.
Top choice.
For cheap? Well, the price is low. Not cheap. Quiet and reliable.
I would probably lean towards something like a Clarity, or honestly a Camry or an Accord would be fine. The hybrids, hybrid Camry, hybrid Accord would be very reliable. And the Clarity would also be quiet, comfy, and reliable. And all those are going to be less expensive to keep around because, remember, cheap is not just an acquisition cost thing, it's a cost of operation. So if you can get 50 miles per gallon in your hybrid versus 30 miles per gallon or 20 miles per gallon in your non-hybrid, that's really going to sway that math in the favor of the hybrid.
Any Volkswagen version of the Audi Q3?
No.
When are we going to get some Alex on Autos calendars and other merch? Specifically, a sexy calendar.
Oh, a sexy calendar. Oh, dear. So
never.
Yeah, never. So, yeah, you'd have to get a sexy host first. If you want merch, there is a link down there in the description for the Teespring merch site, which somehow went really wrong, and someone told me, like, hey, your merch has been down for months. I didn't know. Any rate, so there is a link down there, and there's also a discount code. This is a good segue, because I totally forgot to mention this earlier. There is a discount code down there for 10% off of the merch that is available on the site. So, hey.
What's the code?
It's in the description somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, the code's down there. Dig in the description. It's under the sticker. Yeah, you have to work for it. You got to want it. So there's if you want Alex and Auto stickers, which are these guys here. So if you want a sticker, you can send a postage prepaid. That's that one right there. There we go. This is my demo envelope. There we go. So you can, for stickers, let's segue into this one for a moment. Send a postage prepaid envelope. See, stamp there, your address, and then pop that in an envelope like that, and send it to this P.O. box there. That's in the description. So P.O. Box 573 in Redwood Estates, California. So you send that, and then we will send you back one or two of these stickers. So that is available down there. And then below that in the comment section, that's where you'll find the link to the merch site and the discount code for said merch. The merch discount is only valid through midnight tonight. So act fast. You can also find us over at Instagram. We should plug our Instagram now because, if you didn't think this was crazy enough, you haven't seen the Instagram. And this is where, let's see if we can get fun things. This is where things like this can happen. Can I get this close enough so you can actually see there? There we go. That's where that happens. It flipped to somebody else's Instagram. There we go. Plugging someone else's Instagram. But if you want to see what happens when I accidentally, that was this morning. Rather unfortunately, I confused my chapstick with my glue stick. That was not a good morning. But It's also full of other crazy things, like if you ever wanted to know what it was like when someone was doing the Brazil Jesus pose on top of the sill of a Kia Seltos, hey, that happens. And trust me, it's never happening on the YouTube channel, and it's never happening on Facebook.com/AlexNautos, so Instagram is your place to go, and I guess you could create your own calendar out of that.
You can.
I don't think that would sell on the merch site.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the, back to cars, thoughts on the Mach-E versus Model Y? Which excites you more?
Now this is maybe a potentially charged answer to the Tesla folks out there, but, or maybe not, maybe it's a backhanded compliment, I don't know. I'm actually more impressed with the Mach-E because Tesla is the one with the track record, so we expect the Model Y to be a crossover Model 3, and the Model 3 is fine, so there's nothing wrong with the Model 3. We expect the Model Y to be the same thing with a bigger butt, right? But we haven't seen a manufacturer take on Tesla directly. And I know there's a lot of argument on this one, but the rationale here is that we truly haven't. So, we have an E-Pace, or an I-Pace rather, we have an e-tron, we have a Taycan, etc., but none of these are the same thing as in Tesla's lineup. The closest will be the Polestar 2, which is a sedan about the same size as the Model 3, but it's kind of late, so it still isn't around yet. We have the e-tron and the I-Pace, which are a lot smaller than the Model X, and they're not 3 rows, they're only 2 rows. It's not the same thing either. There's the Taycan, but the Taycan honestly is more Model 3 sized, but like double Model S priced, so not the same thing at all. So, the crazy cyborg Mustang thing is going to be the first thing from a major car company that's going to have the range, the performance, the size, the category, the everything that is that corollary to the Tesla. So I think that's going to be the first true test of competition in the market, but also some questions wrapped around let's just go out on a limb and say, if the Mach-E is better at X, Y, and Z than the Model Y, does that translate into sales success? Because I've long argued that a lot of Tesla's success, it has less to do with the EV part and more to do with the brand, the performance, the aura of mystique, all of that, than the actual EV part itself. So, I know a lot of people actually that have bought Model 3s specifically, and the last thing that they talk about is any kind of green thing or the EV part. They're wowed by the purchase process, which I personally loved because I did not have to leave this building. I just clicked some buttons online, scanned some stuff in, and the car came to me. I didn't have to visit a dealer. I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't have to deal with anybody. I didn't even have to talk to anybody on the phone. It just arrived. Car by Amazon, and that's great. I love that part. So purchase price. Obviously, the Model S was very attractive. I think the Model X is a little funny looking. And I'm not the biggest fan of the Model 3's front end, but the overall aesthetic is definitely important. And then performance are what's most frequently cited. And I think that when you talk to most Model 3 shoppers, especially the dual motor Model 3 people or whatever, they'll talk about ludicrous mode. They'll talk about how fast they are, how they press you back in your seat. They're not talking about like, well, my carbon emissions were so much lower, and I put solar. And there's a number of people that do, and I'm not discounting that at all. This sounds like I'm making fun of it, but hey, I live in Santa Cruz County. We're putting solar in and going off the grid personally, so I am with you there. But you don't hear people talking about their Model 3 going, I got to work and my CO2 emissions were 0 because I have solar panels on my house and all that. No, you hear, I just got a Model 3. Oh my God, it's so fast. All the time.
That's true. So
that's, I think, the interesting part is, can someone else get there? And I think that's my problem with some of the other EVs that are out there too, is that they're trying a different tact, which has proven to be a very limited market. I mean, if you wanted efficiency, then a Toyota Prius Prime is, I argue, the most impressive piece of efficiency that you can buy in America. And the reason for that is, it gets, it's second in the world in EV efficiency. 133 mpge is below only one specific trim level of the Model 3 in terms of EV efficiency. and simultaneously it's giving you 54 miles per gallon, the second best in North America in terms of gasoline fuel economy. And it's doing that with the same drivetrain. So that same transaxle that has 2 motors and 1 planetary gear set is doing both of those things. It's acting as a transmission and it's driving the car forward as an EV, and it still somehow comes out in the top 2 in both categories. But I think we've proven that efficiency is absolutely not sexy.
It's true. Is the VW T-Roc coming to the US?
Sadly, no, and neither is the T-Roc convertible, which is really, really cute.
3008 plug-in versus Kuga plug-in versus Outlander. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Outlander would be on the low end there. I would probably go with the Ford plug-in. That's a tricky one. We don't have the 3008 in the US, but I have driven them in Europe. They're totally fine, but I think that I would go with the Ford myself. They have a little bit of a longer history with hybrids and electrification.
What do you think of airless tires?
They look interesting. The Tweels they look totally cool too. My big question, and I have never driven them, mind you. I've been trying super hard. But my big question would be, how noisy are they? Because that's been a persistent complaint about airless tires in the past, has been their noise.
Okay. This one's kind of a long one. How is the reliability of Chrysler Pacifica hybrid compared with the new Highlander hybrid or Honda Odyssey or Toyota Sienna?
That's a good question. Now, FCA had some initial stumbles with quality issues on the hybrid transaxle, but weird twist here is that the hybrid transaxle in the Pacifica is rumored to be built by Aisin in the same factory that makes Toyota's hybrid transmissions. And the FCA hybrid system operates on the same basic principles as the Toyota hybrid system. So intrinsically, it should be just as reliable long-term as long as they truly have worked out those specific initial design errors. The problem initially seemed to be that there was a resistor that was undersized somehow in the electronic control system, and they had to work through some initial design things. But supposedly after that, they've been very reliable. Overall reliability is probably still going to be higher in the Toyota minivan or the Toyota hybrid system, just because of their slightly longer track record when doing it. But I would probably buy the Pacifica hybrid over an Odyssey or a Sienna. And if you're a big family, or if you want that EV driving ability, then Pacifica over hybrid Highlander as well. The Highlander hybrid is going to give you better fuel economy as a hybrid, but if you want to shift some of your consumption over to electricity, that's not going to happen in it, but it will in the Pacifica hybrid.
How do you feel about Mercedes GLB versus GLC versus other luxury compacts?
We will have the GLB here shortly, so stay tuned.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to find my spot again. Sonata versus Camry Xse V6.
You'll have to wait until we drive the N line for that one. So at the moment, Sonata is just a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine, making about 190 horsepower, if I'm remembering correctly, and the 1.6-liter turbo making 180 horsepower. But very oddly, and this is a bit of a spoiler because the video is coming up, very oddly, the 2.5-liter and the 1.6-liter turbo are exactly the same in terms of their 0 to 60. So neither one of those is the performance option. If you want the V6 comparator, then that will be the upcoming Sonata N-Line, which should be on sale this fall.
What's the best way to support this channel? YouTube, Patreon, or others?
Oh, that's a good question. That's I should be plugging these things, I'm always told. So
I'm plugging it for you.
So you can buy merch down there. You can always join the memberships here at YouTube. That's probably the easiest way, is the YouTube membership feature. So be sure and hit that membership button down there. I think it's next to the join button. I think there's a subscribe button.
There's buttons.
There's buttons. Yeah, there's a subscribe button. There's a join memberships button. You can also super chat if you just feel like giving us cash, because Alex needs to eat, and she's on a very, very small salary.
I guess.
Very small. That's how you do that. I'm always bad at the plugging there. So be sure and find us over at facebook.com/AlexandAutos. That's where you can see what we're driving this week. If you want to see pictures of me doing stupid shit, did I say that out loud? Stupid stuff. I used the shit word, my bad. If you want to see pictures of us doing stupid stuff, that's on Instagram. Alex and Auto, Facebook.com/Alex and Autos is the serious stuff, more serious stuff. And the YouTube channel, excluding this video, is the serious stuff.
The most serious.
Like our video today on weight distributing hitches. If you ever wanted to know the dark magic inside a weight distributing hitch, that video is up and you should check it out. Even if you don't tow anything, go check it out.
Do you want me to still ask you some questions?
Sure, why not?
Going? Okay. What is the best Japanese SUV and best German SUV for a family with 2 toddlers?
I just noticed someone super chatted, so be sure and hit that, get the super chat in there at some point. Anyway, go back and ask me that question again since I'm distracted.
The super chat question or the...
No, the one you asked before.
What is the best Japanese SUV and the best German SUV for a family with 2 toddlers?
Okay. Japanese SUV is so limiting. I would argue, honestly, if you have 2 toddlers, meaning they're in car seats, that your best option might not be from Japan. Something like a Volkswagen Atlas, not from Japan at all, but is going to be very handy because you can leave 2 child seats latched into place in any position in the second row and still tilt and slide them forward to get in the third row. And for some reason, you can't do that in nearly anything else. The Mazda CX-9 is one possible option. It will let you do that on one side, but not if you get the captain's chairs. You have to get the other seat option. And then the Nissan Pathfinder will let you do it, but it's not really on my recommended list at the moment. So Highlander, Pilot, Ascent, etc., you cannot tilt and slide forward and then get an adult into the third row very easily at all. You can slide the seats forward, and then you're left with a very narrow gap to try and shove your way through into the back. Maybe small children could do it, but that's a bit of a problem. So if you're combining adults and children in the back, I would definitely look somewhere else. And if you absolutely positively must buy something from Japan, then I would just go with the Toyota Highlander. It's the easy win.
Is it better to get a new base engine vehicle like the Audi A5 or a used tweener engine vehicle like the Audi S5, assuming they're about the same price?
Always keep in mind maintenance and reliability there. So the newer one's going to have a warranty. It's going to be the newer design. It's probably going to be less expensive to keep around. So that discount tweener may seem like a good deal at the beginning, but it may end up costing you an awful lot over time.
When is the Lincoln Aviator Black Label review coming?
I wish it would come soon. I don't know. Lincoln has not sent me one, so I don't know. You can always tweet and social media and Facebook link Lincoln and say, "Hey, what's up, Lincoln? Why are you not sending me that car?" I actually honestly don't understand the way that some of these car companies work. It's a little funny. So we were invited to the launch event for the Explorer, but when we reached out to Lincoln to say, "Hey, when's the Aviator coming? Can we drive it? When can we get one for review, etc." Crickets. So I don't know. Which I find disappointing because I love the look of the Aviator. But yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Is Kia's 1.6 turbo engine having oil dilution problems?
No. So the only small turbo, let me rephrase that. So oil dilution can happen in any modern engine that is focused on efficiency, has relatively low friction rings, and generally speaking is gasoline direct injection. So that could include tons of engines out there. But the only engine that seems to be having notable problems would be the Honda 1.5 liter turbo.
Ferrari or Lamborghini?
Neither. I would BMW M5. And I know that sounds stupid, but the M5 is crazy, stupid, fun, and fast, and looks like a regular sedan.
Ram 2500 or F250? 2020 models for both.
2500, 3/4 ton truck, absolutely absolutely Ford Super Duty. I've said this before, but like in the half ton segment, I think honestly Ram really is by a little bit of a margin the best half ton truck that's available there, just in terms of the overall ride, the trailering ability, the feature set that we have. The interior especially is a runaway win for Ram. Seats are comfortable, etc. They've got a good solid engine lineup. 8-speed automatic is lovely. And I think that really outweighs some of the engine lineup changes that we see in the engine lineup improvements that we see in the Ford versus the Ram in the half-ton segment. But when you look at a 3/4 ton truck, all of a sudden it's a very different model, and I would rate the Ram the last, actually, in that segment, to be honest. The main reason would be when Ram redesigned the 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks, it was really more of a heavy refresh. So the seats are the same as they were before, the doors are the same as they were before, so the seats are not as comfortable. FCA decided not to invest more cash in a new transmission alliance for heavy-duty trucks, so they still use an old 6-speed automatic transmission. And in the 3/4 ton truck, the engine doesn't produce its maximum power as a result. So you'll get considerably more power and torque from either the Chevy or the GMC or the Ford trucks in the 3/4 ton segment. Also, their newer 10-speed automatic transmissions. Ram does have, a decent looking dashboard, etc., and some nice touches here and there. There's some solid reasons, I think, to still get it, mainly circling around the Cummins and its overall reliability and the Power Wagon. But for the average tower or hauler out there, if you're truly using your 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck for that fifth wheel or gooseneck towing, I would just get the F250 and call it a day. Or the GMC is a very attractive option. The Chevy is, the look of the outside is my problem with the Chevy. But I like the look of the Ford. Got some great options there too. The turbo diesel is absolutely fantastic. The new 10-speed's great too. And a lot of that applies to the GMC as well.
Have you driven the Cadillac CT6 Blackwing yet?
No, sadly, and I think very few of us will, because it is dying very soon. So they've made very, very few of them. It's already been canceled. The engine is dying as well, which is a very sad day, I think.
Ford Pinto or Chevy Vega?
Oh, neither.
Do different all-wheel drive systems
Lyft
matter?
or Uber.
Or piggyback. Do different all-wheel drive systems matter?
Yes, with caveats. There obviously are some decent differences between all-wheel drive systems, but I think they matter an awful lot less than people think. So tires are going to be a bigger factor in a lot of situations than all-wheel drive system choice. So, for instance, I would rather have a Prius E all-wheel drive with studded snow tires on it than a Subaru Impreza all-wheel drive with all seasons. So keep that in mind. There obviously are going to be differences between their performance, but always remember tires. That applies off-road as well as on-road. So you will go places. If you could jack up an all-wheel drive minivan and put some 33-inch all-terrains on it, it will take you places that a Wrangler with all seasons just couldn't go. Sounds odd, but it will.
Would you agree or disagree Honda should bring back the Element, but in plug-in or EV?
No, the Element was terrible.
What kind of charge level, 1 or 2, do you recommend for electric vehicles like Kona Electric in terms of preserving more battery life? Or does it not matter?
So generally speaking, level 2 is fine for battery life. So we don't see any data tells us that we don't see any battery life degradation in a rational world with level 2 charging. Logically, there should be, because rate of charge is obviously a factor that will affect the breakdown of the dielectric inside the battery. But the delta between level 1 and level 2 charging at the individual cell level is not huge. The difference really in longevity is when you DC fast charge, because then you're going significantly faster. So I would say if you're buying a new EV now, you should just go ahead and level 2 charge it. It's fine. There's not a problem. And then you're helping future-proof yourself if you get a level 2 charger installed in your home that's a 40 amp or a 50 amp charger that'll help future-proof you for your next EV or plug-in hybrid vehicle down the road that may charge faster.
Do you think GM or Ford could ever catch up to Tesla in terms of software?
It's possible. Well, let me rephrase that. Yes, if they wanted to. Yes. The question is, what's the drive internally? Because obviously, Tesla has an astronomical market valuation, but they have relatively little cash. So, for instance, if FCA wanted to spend $2 billion with a B on on an infotainment software package tomorrow. FCA could, because FCA's got a lot of cash around. There's this classic argument that FCA is the canary of the automotive industry, but that only applies if canaries are fantastically rich. So, FCA's got a ton of cash around. If they wanted to spend $2 billion tomorrow on software, they could, and they could just buy, 10 startup companies in the Bay Area and make them do their bidding, right? The question is drive. They don't seem to be that interested in it. So infotainment's a tricky question. I would argue that Tesla's magic isn't necessarily specifically software. It's more of the vision behind it and the holistic approach that they seem to have taken. Some of the other systems that we see out there, I think, have taken more R&D time than the Tesla system. But Tesla has decided to be more nimble, be more interested in updates and feature changes here and there. So it would require not just capability, but a mentality change.
Given that Hyundai and Kia have introduced new vehicles with many good features, do you expect the Honda Accord or Civic to follow suit with major changes in the new 2021 models?
No. So we'll see. Most car manufacturers, the cars will go to their grave with only minor changes. So redesign to redesign, there's not going to be a massive change. There may be some minor changes in software, some tweaking here and there, but structurally, manufacturers are not set up for that kind of R&D because there's a huge amount of cost involved in that. Since so many of these systems are integrated, it's not like Honda it would cost a lot of money for Honda to try and give us like a new dashboard with big screens in the Accord. It's just not in their budget that way somehow.
Do you think the Genesis GV80 would survive in the crowd of luxury SUVs?
I suspect that the GV80 will be fine. The eternal question, I guess, in a way, will be what is the standout thing for Genesis? So far, they've got a good track record in their sedans. And I know there's a lot of debate about that when you take a look at the sales numbers, but I remind everybody the Genesis went about 13 calendar months without a Genesis dealer in a number of high-volume states. So when you take a look at Genesis sales charts, they were trucking along, took this nosedive off a cliff, and then they came back. And that's because of their dealer network issues and the whole drama surrounding Genesis. There's a video on the channel about that. But bottom line, G80 and G90 both sell well in their segments, and G70 is a little young, but it's already outselling a number of key players that are established in that segment too. So clearly people are interested in Genesis as a brand, and I think that a lot of that comes from their attempt to position themselves as the fun Lexus alternative. So the Lexus being focused on reliability and that, but not as focused on driving performance, etc. With obviously a few exceptions there, but generally speaking. And then Genesis has gone over to, well, we'll do that with a Korean flair and some turbo engines. And I think that should play well for them continuing. Also, the GV80 is very different than the Lexus RX because it's rear-wheel drive. So it's going to have a different driving dynamic, and it's going to have a brand new twin-turbo V6 available as well. So we'll see how it goes. That segment's getting pretty crowded, though.
Any reason to not get the RAV4 Prime? Will they nail the reliability in the first year?
Again, this is a difficult thing to talk about because we're predicting reliability, so I don't have my crystal ball with me, but if I did, I would say that, it's hard to bet against Toyota. So if you're betting on reliability, that's going to be your safe bet, but it's still betting.
Do you think Hyundai's unlimited battery warranties are a gimmick? If I want to keep...
Of course they are.
Should I go Hyundai over Tesla if I want to keep my car for the next 20 years?
Oh, probably too. Yes, of course. But of course on both fronts. So warranties are always marketing. So the reason here is that warranties don't really necessarily cost the company too much more if the product is reliable. So the warranty game can be played short term to good effect. A good example would be FCA, right when they started adding the F to the line. So when Cerberus Capital Management ditched them after the Mercedes fire sale, before, and they were acquired by Fiat. In that time frame there, they had the lifetime powertrain warranty and the huge extended warranties, etc. And that definitely helps improve customer perception and customer loyalty in a limited window. But obviously that's not tenable, so that's why it doesn't exist anymore, because you can't have a lifetime warranty forever on a product. It's a product that is consumable and will end up breaking. Everybody's car will end up breaking at some point. But on the other hand, we see companies like Hyundai and Kia that have had a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty and a long bumper-to-bumper warranty for decades now, or over a decade, I should say. And obviously that is tenable because warranty claims are very, very low. So actual warranty costs and their financials are just fine. So for them, it's totally a gimmick and it's totally a valid marketing play for them because it's sustainable and it gives this aura of reliability that helps try and match customer perception to the reliability numbers that they've been able to achieve already. Some car companies like Toyota and Honda have long had consistent reliability, so their reliability reputation is built on decades and decades of continual improvement and hard work, whereas oddly enough, Hyundai and Kia have somehow really ramped up their quality and reliability in a very, very short window. So 30 years ago it was terrible, and now it is Lexus and Toyota good in the metrics that we know, which obviously again are shorter in measure, but they've been using that advertising value to try and match perception to reality, I guess.
I'm not sure if this kind of segues into it, but why is FCA as a whole so slow at putting out new car models?
Oh, because they don't have to, because they're just a money printing machine. So when you look at FCA's lineup, if your 10, 15-year-old car outsells the top seller at the next in the segment, why would you make a new one? I mean, that's good business sense. So like Dodge Charger outsells nearly every other full-size sedan in America combined. So it doesn't just outsell Avalon by a large amount. It outsells almost all of them put together. Pacifica outsells every other minivan in America by an enormous margin. The Dodge Caravan outsells every other minivan except for the Pacifica by a decent margin, and it's even older. The Grand Cherokee is still top seller in that segment. It's not a spring chicken. Durango still sells about 60-something thousand units a year. It's not the bottom end. It outsells Mazda CX-9 by an enormous margin, and it's 12 years older. So all that put together, if you can keep selling your old products for an enormous... and Challenger is an excellent example. Challenger outsells Mustang month to month here and there throughout the year, and some years it outsells Mustang entirely, and it blows Camaro out of the water, and it's practically 20 years old, and it's based on like a 30-year-old Mercedes practically. So if there's a market for your product and it's instead incredibly profitable, then yeah, keep selling it. Just look at FCA's financials. Last year, FCA was by far the most profitable American car company. Even though they didn't build as many cars as Ford and GM, they made way, 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 way more money than either of them.
Would you still recommend the Kia Stinger?
I like the Kia Stinger. I think that actually it's a great deal now because you can get a better deal on it. Initially, there was definitely some gouging from the dealers, but I still like the Stinger. If you're looking for something outside the ordinary, it's a great buy. I think, unfortunately, the sedan market is not growing in America. It is definitely shrinking. So it was a sedan offering in a segment that's shrinking, and it's pricier because it doesn't really have a direct corollary. It's the mainstream rear-wheel drive fun sort of Audi A7 thing. I mean, it outsells the A7, so that's a success. But it has the wrong logo on it to be an A7 competitor, but then it doesn't have anything else to compete with an Avalon or a whatever in America, which also don't sell well. Anyway, so it's a great car though, but there are a lot of great cars that don't do well on the market.
Would you recommend someone buy a used GSF?
I always like the GSF. I mean, it's not a bad buy. It's going to be reliable on the used market. It's not going to be as exciting, unfortunately, as some of the competition's turbocharged models.
Do you think there will be an Altima hybrid again?
Altima Hybrid. I am not sure on that one. Probably not soon.
I think
apparently I'm ringing.
Would you like? Okay. Is there going to be a Camry all-wheel drive?
Oh, there already is. So there's a video on our channel about that. We just had a first drive review on it.
I'll have a video too. That's right.
And I will say before we sign off here, because we're rapidly running into our time limit at 4 o'clock. Sorry, everybody. I was actually quite surprised by how slow the Subaru Legacy sells and how blunt and upfront Nissan and Toyota both were about Camry all-wheel drive and Altima all-wheel drive. When I asked a Toyota person, I said, so, what's your vision of competition for the Camry? What do you see this as being? What do you see the direct cross shops are for this car? What do you see this customer looking like? What does your data tell you? Immediately thinking Legacy was going to be what was being talked about, and absolutely not. They said their most direct competitor was the Nissan Altima all-wheel drive, and the second was RAV4, and the third was Toyota Highlander. So they said that all-wheel drive was a method for them to try and stem the loss of sedan sales to crossover sales, as well as to answer the Altima's success with all-wheel drive. So if you look at 2019, now you can see why. If you look at 2019 sales, Altima was actually up by quite a lot in a year where Nissan was having a terrible year and they had cut incentives all over the board. So there was a lot less cash on the hood on the Nissan dealer lot than there was before, and Altima was still decently up. Apparently because of all-wheel drive, 30% nationally is what the sales split is expected to be for all-wheel drive on the Altima as well as the Camry. And according to Toyota, if you're above the snow belt in America and you're in the Midwest and Pacific Northwest and the East, etc., then 65 to 80% of Camrys will be all-wheel drive in those markets. So they're preparing to be making a ton of all-wheel drive Camrys. We're talking, probably 150,000 all-wheel drive Camrys a year. And oddly enough, that's, probably 5 times Subaru Legacy sales. So I guess Legacy is this tiny blip at the bottom of the chart because most shoppers seem to go into the Subaru dealer, look at the Legacy, look at the Outback, and then buy an Outback. Which is the weirdest dynamic, actually, honestly, in the automotive industry, because the Outback is the only wagon that outsells the sedan. And it outsells it by not a little, but by like an enormous margin, 5-6 to 1. The Outback is the most popular Subaru. And even though they've tried to clad it in some extra body cladding here and there, it's still a wagon, and we know that because the interior and the seats and the dashboard and the doors and the front are identical to the Subaru Legacy, and it's sold as a Subaru Legacy wagon elsewhere. So, and it used to be called the Legacy Outback, and they just decided to drop that Legacy thing, dive into the crossover-y bits, and give it some extra plastic and make it a crossover. So, yeah, there's that. At any rate, with that, I think it is time to sign off, everybody. So be sure and check out the merch down there. There's that link down there. You can use the merch discount code till the end of the day today. And then, of course, stay tuned for some giveaways. We have all these dealies back here that we'll be giving away. And we'll also be giving away a hitch for a 2019 to 2020 RAV4 or RAV4 hybrid. So we have a video where I installed a hitch on our RAV4. We're going to be doing some towing with that. Hopefully we'll be able to find a camper. If anybody lives in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, or Northern California, and you have a tiny, tiny camping trailer or a pop-up tent trailer that you would let us borrow, you can email us at itsaconspiracy@alexandautos.com, and maybe we will borrow that from you so we can do some towing. Towing capacity of the RAV4 is 1,750 pounds, so it's got to be pretty light. We're also working with some trailer companies. We don't know if those leads will go anywhere, but hopefully one of them will let us borrow a trailer for a review and for reviewing the RAV4 towing. So hopefully that's coming up soon. And again, if you have a 2019 to 2020 RAV4 or a RAV4 hybrid, then we have a hitch for you, and that will be part of a separate giveaway from our usual giveaways. And then the next live show may be sometime, because over the next 6 weeks I will be in the office for 6 days. We've got Buick Encore GX, we've got Sonata Hybrid, we've got Jeep Gladiator Mojave, Geneva Auto Show, Sorrento launch.
It's a lot. I just kind of put it all together.
Yeah, there's a bunch in there. There's a lot of things going in there. So Bunches of things going through May, so you may not see too much of me, but you will definitely see videos on the channel. And of course, facebook.com/AlexNautos and the Instagram channel. And then we will see you all very much later.